the Emily Gail Talks Golf radio show on your ESPN stations on the Big Island, AM 850 KHLO East Hawaii and AM 790 KKON West Hawaii. I am very grateful to the Big Island Country Club for being one of the presenters of our show, and also to the Mauna Kea Beach Resort. And I'm also very grateful that Earl Rigador took the time to come down to do our show. Thank you, Earl, for coming.
Aloha.
And Earl is the cultural director of the Kaupulehu Cultural Center.
Perfect.
At Hualalai Resort.
There you go.
Home of the MasterCard Championship at Hualalai.
That's right.
And Earl, we've seen each other when we talked the other night, and you said you knew exactly who I was. I know exactly who you are now too. So I'm really delighted that you came and joined us today.
You know what, Emily? Seeing you on television and doing your spots at the MasterCard at Hualalai, you look as good as you are on television as you're in person. I mean, you're awesome.
Well, you know, it's always nice. I've been doing those shows for about 10 years, and I always tell everybody it isn't NBC. It's Emily making TV shows on my dime, my time, so you get what you get. But you just warmed my heart last night when you said you love the way I talk to everybody, and everybody gets in it.
I do. You know, you do a lot, Emily, for all of the golf courses, Hualalai especially, coming down and doing it on your time. And we say mahalo nui loa. Thank you very much for doing that for us at the Hualalai and the community in Kona.
Well, I love doing it, and I think it's been a wonderful experience from the day the MasterCard came over. Well, we're into our 11th year now.
Yes,
right?
we are.
And it tells the story. You know, we've all had the opportunity to be around some of the great players. What we're talking about is the MasterCard Championship at Hualalai. Comes up every January. This year it'll be January 17th to the 21st.
Yes.
And MasterCard Championship, it's the Champions Tour event. They have to have won an event in the prior 2 years or have won a major.
Correct.
And they also for sponsor exemptions. Tournament sources today, a.k.a. Kelly Fliear, who's the tournament manager, told me that it looks like Gary Player will be playing.
Yes, I think he is.
And hasn't made the formal announcement. I said to Kelly, can I mention that? Because we all love to have the marquee players. Well, there's a lot of marquee players coming up and playing, but we love it when Gary and them can make it. But this year, there's already 41 eligible players. Andy Bean just won the other day.
I watched him.
Wasn't that wonderful? You know, the great thing about the Champions Tour is these guys a lot of them are earning more money in one tournament than they won in their whole career.
That's right.
So it's wonderful that they have the opportunity to earn the money. But most of all, they have that competitive fire, even at the age of 50, 55, 60. Lee Torino's 67. Some of these guys are in their late 60s.
You know, I'm
playing terrific golf.
I'm 56 myself, and you know, don't count us down.
Well,
you know, we're
say
still
what
up there and going.
So tell me a little bit. I've always loved the way the MasterCard Championship. I've worked a lot with John Freitas and Jeremy Sosner, and of course everybody who over the years who's been there. And I've always loved the way that you've integrated. And I like to say we, because any of us that have been involved in it, I work with the media. The way you've integrated the Hawaiiana into the event.
You know, Emily, we think that by sharing the culture, the arts, the history of our people, the Hawaiian people, with those that are visiting with us for the week or 10 days that they're there, it makes me feel good. And having a spot at the tent, you know, the big white tent.
The tent, they call it Spectator Village.
Spectator Village, hospitality. I have two of my employees up there sharing the different arts, the history. I go up with my ukulele and I share the Hawaiian music.
Now, what are the two ladies' names? Because I got them on camera last year. They were really enthusiastic.
Yes, we have Kule Aloha Young, and right now we have a new one that came in, and her name is Kaleolani Stanley. Keaka Makanani was one of the girls that you had on tape.
And they show people how to make like lahala.
Lahala, they weave lahala bracelets.
Yes.
So you know, it's a sharing of the Hawaiian people, whether it's history or culture or even the arts. And we want our visitors coming in to know who we are and where we came from. And of course, watching fabulous golf.
Yeah. Well, I always say, you know, these are new times of golf courses having to integrate into areas that have a lot of cultural and a lot of historic legacy.
Yes, yes,
And to
yes.
preserve it is extremely important, and not only important, but it's a wonderful, warm, aloha feeling when you go out to a golf course and you feel all that culture. And the cultural center, the Kaupulehu Cultural Center, of course, is beautiful center. And I know that your guests really love it. Yeah, tell me, is it open? How much is it open to the public in terms of stopping
Oh,
by?
we're open.
Every-
We're open to the public. You know,
Okay.
anybody can come down, and if you're stopped at the gate, like the security will.
So if you were going to beach access, would that be where you'd go?
Oh, yeah.
Okay,
And just tell them you're gonna come down and see Uncle Earl,
there you go.
and come down to the center. You know, even if you cannot participate, a lot of our classes are complimentary for our guests at the Four Seasons Hualalai. We have Herb Connie's beautiful art in there. Just the 11 originals that I have from Mr. Connie that I show in there talks about the Ahupua, the land division. And looking at his paintings, you could almost be there that day, walking around the village and being able to share the kuleana, the responsibilities that people had at that time. So if you just want to come down and take a look at the art, please come
Well,
down.
the feeling around the cultural center, it just oozes out of it. But I wasn't aware that it was open to the public every day, so that's great to know.
Yeah, we're open every day except for Saturdays. So my girls are there from Sunday and till Friday.
And Spectator Village at the MasterCard Championship on January 17th to the 21st, and of course every year you create the Spectator Village. It's a big screen where people can watch the
Yes,
tournament. There's a
yes.
lot of aloha and Hawaiian under the tent, but
Yes.
you're taking the cultural center to the spectators,
Yes,
which is really nice.
it's that other arm.
I noticed
that
each
reach
year
out.
more and more people are spending time in there too,
Well,
because
I'm
they
glad.
do feel that
I'm glad.
feeling.
I do have some of our kupunas that come down, and share their manao, share their knowledge. So, even if you live here on the island, or if you come from the mainland for visiting and watching the golf, come by and talk story. In Hawaii we say kuka kuka. Talk story with our kupuna.
Oh, I don't know that expression.
Yeah.
What is that?
Kuka kuka.
Did you know that,
kuka
Jay?
means
I'll bet you're going to use that Monday on the Morning Mojo on
to talk
KPay.
story, yeah.
Oh,
to
okay.
talk story.
Now I got another word rolling in my head that you said just earlier that I've never really known the word. I know it has something to do with division of the land, but the
Ahupua.
okay. Could you just explain that a
Yeah,
little bit?
an ahupua is a land division that usually stretches from the summit of a mountain. For us, it's Hualalai. It goes from the summit down to the seashore and beyond. Now, the reason why I say beyond is because the land doesn't just stop there at the shoreline. It goes on. Yeah. So on the ahupua, you had different families that had kuleana. Kuleana meaning the responsibility. And they shared different types of work, if you will. Farmers had their area, the fishermen, the bird catchers, and we're hoping that we can really share that ahupua or even the history of it.
And do you have any stories of some of the players? I know one story, and I'll just share my story because I'm sure you'll have plenty of them. But at the press conference, well, even Dana Quigley 2 years ago when he won, do you remember him being on the green at the presentation and he pulled the tea leaf out of his pocket that
Yes.
Richard had given him?
Yes.
And when he went into the press conference, that tea leaf, I mean, he was so attached to that tea leaf. Do you want to tell the story a little
No,
bit?
you go ahead and tell.
Well, Richard, one of the guest attendants at Hualalai early in the morning had given Dana a tea leaf. And significance of the tea leaf is just a good luck.
It's a good luck,
Okay.
purity, yeah.
And Dana put it in his back pocket and carried it all day. And he really, when they made the presentation, he won in a playoff against Tom Watson.
Right,
every
right.
year has been very exciting.
Yes,
There's
yes.
been nothing but exciting finishes at
Yes.
MasterCard. And he brought that tea leaf out and thanked Richard. And as I say, he went into the press conference and he put it on the table, and that was that really made an impact with him.
Oh, yes.
And
oh,
do you have
yes.
some stories of players that really take an interest in?
Well, it's a funny story where I was announcing last year's on number 1 tee of the players, and while we were waiting for Hale Irwin to tee off, he came up to me and he said, Uncle Earl, I'm no as Uncle Earl down there. I'm older than dirt down there. But anyway, Hale came up to me and he said, Uncle Earl, I was wondering if you could introduce me in Hawaiian. I go, well, I can try. He said, well, what does H-A-L-E spell in Hawaiian? I go, Hale. And I looked at him and I go, oh my God, you want me to do that? He said, yeah, let's see what kind of reaction we get from the crowd. So I said, okay. So he came up. I said, I introduced him where he played and his accomplishments. And I said, ladies and gentlemen, how about a big Island welcome to Mr. Hale Irwin. And the whole gallery just cracked up. And he loved it.
Oh,
he
absolutely.
Loved it. He said, Uncle Earl, you come on tour with me and you'll announce me as Hale Irwin.
We're talking with Earl Rigador, who is the cultural director at the Kaupulehu Cultural Center at Hualalai Resort, home of the MasterCard Championship at Hualalai. Coming up January 17th through the 21st, you're listening to the Emily Gail Talks Golf on your ESPN station on the Big Island. That's AM 850 KHLO East Hawaii and AM 790 KKON West Hawaii. Many thanks to the Big Island Country Club and Mauna Kea Beach Resort for being presenters of our show. What's interesting about Hale, I've always asked him, he represented Kapalua for 21 years.
Yes.
He's representing Hokulea now. He really has a very strong affinity for the islands. And he's often said that he's felt that one of the reasons that he has done so well in his career is he's had that kind of home here in Hawaii where he would come and he really learned how to relax and how to just let things, take it easy.
Yeah, Hale and the rest of the field that come to Hawaii, especially last year, I talked to a lot of them. And, I asked them, how do you feel being here? I know you have a lot of accomplishments and that's why you're here, you won tournaments. But how does it feel to be here in Hawaii? They say exactly what you said. They're here to relax. Though they're playing on a tournament, they can relax. And once they relax, everything else just don't matter anymore.
Yeah.
Hawaii, a lot of them say that Hawaii is a very healing place. I say, well, we're the youngest island. And it's still alive. It's still alive. But they're here, and their spouses, come over and we offer classes to them. This year I'm hoping to do a star navigation little lesson for them, just showing them the way our ancestors got here, by wayfinding, celestial
and
navigation.
they take an interest because they often mention it. They all mention it.
Yeah.
Bruce Summerhays had 47 family members here last year.
That's
I think.
right.
Yeah.
That's right.
And Jay Sigel tells me, he said it's the only tournament that his daughter ever asked if she could come to. Was the one, the Hualalai Resort.
They love it here.
Absolutely.
They love it
and
here.
of course, Gary Fliear, all of them. This is home for many of
Mr.
them.
Fliear, I watched him. We had him go off first last year, and he is such a gentleman. He is such a gentleman, and
Well,
he'll do
he's
it.
playing awfully good too.
Oh,
if,
yeah.
if he wins one more time, he'll have won in 6 decades. He's won in 5 decades so far, and it's always been his goal, which is one of the reasons I think he keeps playing. Remember a couple years ago when Bruce Edwards, who was Tom Watson's caddy, who was diagnosed with ALS?
Yes.
And
He got married there.
To Marcia. Well, I
Yes.
had the privilege or the honor of videotaping their wedding. And a few hours beforehand, Brian Goyne, who's the Champions Tour tournament director for all the championship events, and I had been talking to Tom Watson and Brian earlier in the afternoon, and I don't know Tom Watson, but I had the little video camera and got some shots of Brian, and Brian called me that afternoon and said they want somebody to videotape it, but they don't want a big camera.
That's right.
And were you at that wedding?
I was.
Was that not touching? Now, I'm in touch with Marcia. I just got an email from her the other day, his wife,
Yeah.
Bruce Edwards' wife. And tell that story a little bit about that wedding because it was the most touching
I
scene
know.
on the beach.
Mr. Watson came to the Cultural Center, and right at the time he walked in, I was with my ukulele. I was playing my ukulele and singing. And after I was done, he said, "Do you have a minute?" I said, "Sure." He said, "My caddy is getting married here this weekend, and I was wondering if you could come down and sing a couple of songs at the beach." I said, "Sure." So yes, Emily, I was there, and it was a very, very touching.
None of us really knew that he had been diagnosed with ALS because
Yes.
he had only been diagnosed like the week or two before, and so they decided that this was the place they wanted to get married. It's a rapidly deteriorating disease. It always ends up in a fast.
Yeah, I was shocked
Yeah.
when I found out.
I didn't know either until, late Brian Going
Yeah.
told me, and that's why they wanted to get married. They didn't know how long he would, of course, be alive.
Yeah,
And I
yeah.
think many of us know the story of Tom Watson and Bruce marching down the fairway at the Champions Tour Senior Open,
That's right.
and he was leading, and it was like God had, it was divine intervention
That's
to
right.
have them leading, because that just put the whole message out there to the world about ALS. And Tom Watson is still really working hard. They've done tremendous things to try to raise funds.
That's right.
about the
When,
disease.
after they left, and I watched Mr. Watson play a couple more tournaments where he still was caddying. Then all of a sudden, he wasn't there.
Yeah.
And it kind of touched me too. I go, oh my, it must have been that time.
Yeah, and it was, and as I say, I'm in touch with his wife. She's going through nursing school and is going to graduate. I just got an email 2 days ago,
Yeah,
catch up on it. But
Oh, God bless you.
it really meant a lot to me to be part of that.
absolutely.
We're speaking with Earl Rigador, the cultural director at the Kaupulehu Cultural Center at Hualalai Resort, home of the MasterCard Championship at Hualalai. It's coming up January 17th to the 21st. It's a 54-hole stroke play competition with the Champions Tour players. Lauren Roberts will be defending. We've got 41 players already eligible. Gary Player, it looks like he's going to be back this year. It's only $10 to go out there. It's $25 for the week. All the funds go to the Rotary Club of Kona so they can do projects within the community. Some last words, Earl,
Yes,
to our listeners?
Please come out and check out the MasterCard play down at Hualalai. And if you ever down at the Four Seasons, please come down and visit us at the Cultural Center.
Just pull in at the gate and go to the public access.
Yes.
And
Just come down to
ask for Uncle Earl.
Just come down to the hotel. Yeah.
I love it. I love
Yeah,
it very much.
yeah.
I had the privilege of playing the day after the MasterCard one year with Sam Ainsley.
How was that?
And
How was
it was
that?
great. It was tough. They played the back tees. I couldn't get over the long grass in the back tees. I love that golf course. I played out there with Catherine Freitas a number of times.
good.
Thank you, Earl, so much. We're going to have somebody from MasterCard with every show. It's a big part of my life, and it is for a lot of people on the Big Island, and it certainly raises a lot of money for Big Island charities. It's Earl Rigador, Cultural Director of the Kaupulehu Cultural Center at Hualalai Resort, home of the MasterCard Championship at Hualalai, January 17th through the 21st.
Emily, keep up the good work, and we thank you very much for doing what you do.
Thank you.
Aloha, ahui ho, meke aloha
Yeah.
pumeana.
Aloha. Bless you. You're listening to the Emily Gail Talk Golf Radio Show. I got touched there. Thank you for your warmth and aloha. The Emily Gail Talk Golf Show on your ESPN station on the Big Island, AM 850 KHLO East Hawaii, AM 790 KKON West Hawaii. How'd I do there, J.E.? You getting better? And many thanks to the Big Island Country Club and Mauna Kea Beach Resort for being presenters of our show. Aloha. Welcome to Emily Gail Talks Golf on your ESPN station, AM 850 in Hilo, AM 790 in Kona. And once again, we've got a studio full of guests. Say hello, everybody.
Hello. Aloha.
Aloha. We've got Kelly Fliear. Thank you, Kelly, for being here today. Kelly is the
pleasure.
tournament manager of the Champions Tour MasterCard Championship of Hualalai and also a presenter of the Emily Gail Talks Golf Radio Show. Thanks, Kelly.
You're very welcome.
We've known each other, worked together for, 11 years now?
This will be year 11 for the MasterCard Championship at Hualalai. We're very excited. We look forward to the best year ever. It's our largest field of players since the inception of the tournament in 1997. 42 players this year.
And we got a lot to talk about because the first year I think there were only 17 players, weren't there? Or was that what it
17
was?
or 18, I think that
We
was
went
our
off in the
goal.
dark and almost finished in the dark, and now it's a real spectator event. It's really turned into a great event
It's
for the community.
it's grown similar and parallel to the resort itself, Emily. Hualalai Resort, I remember the very first year, and there was only the condos on the 18th fairway. That was the only development for real estate at that time. There were no homes along the fairways. We only had 18 players, and now I believe there's over 200 homeowners at Hualalai Resort. So it's a pretty magnificent story. not only for golf, but for real estate, and I think for the Big Island as
Well,
well.
we got a lot to talk about. I'm glad that you were able to make it today. I know you had a couple busy days out there working on the logistics with Pete
Rolfing,
Mark Rolfing's brother, who handles logistics for a lot of tournaments.
Pete handles operations at the Mercedes-Benz Championship over in Kapalua, as well as he's a very integral part of our tournament at MasterCard Championship, as well as the Turtle Bay Championship over on Oahu. That's the Sister Champions Tour event on the Aloha season. And then the SBS Open, which is the LPGA event at Turtle Bay, and Pete's also instrumental in that event.
The things that people don't see, that go year-round, behind the scenes, how do those ropes get up, how do they get measured, who knows where they go, all the towers, so
It's
much.
quite a process, and I'm very fortunate to have been under the tutelage of Mark Rolfing back in the 1980s, who was my mentor at the Kapalua International tournaments. At that time, they were hosted and sponsored by Ping, Lincoln Mercury, and Isuzu were the main sponsors. That was in the 80s. I learned a lot about sports marketing as a volunteer. I started as a volunteer for Mark, and it led into a full-time position after a few years. And I have to say, if I was on the mainland in the competitive marketplace that you see nowadays, the universities have sports marketing degrees now. It would be very difficult to be fortunate enough to get an occupation that I've been blessed to get. So I'm very appreciative of that.
And Mark, a lot of people don't realize, Mark started as a marketing guy, as a golf pro, and a marketing guy at Kapalua. And he just had a lot of visions, and he's worked his way into that. And he went through paid the dues as well. And I met you in the 80s too at Kapalua. That's where you and I first met.
I think that anybody who follows golf in Hawaii will understand that Mark Rolfing's probably been the main force behind a lot of the golf, the national golf and televised golf that you see here in the year 2006. And he was a very integral part of the Hawaii Tourism Authority's involvement with all of the events, and not to mention building the Aloha season chain of events in January, which, geez, I would think it's probably somewhere over 50 to 60 hours of live television with repeat telecasts. When you add them all together, it's a huge amount of exposure for our islands, for our tourist industry, for the golf industry, and it's a phenomenal way to market our state.
A lot to talk about. We also have in the studio today, we have Roger Brazel and Jim Lebedinsky and Nancy Brazel. They're the co-owners of Southwest Greens Hawaii, and they've combined their talents to, Roger's an architect and Jim is an irrigation, and they both love the game of golf, and now they're designing and creating putting greens for Southwest Greens Hawaii. They have the franchise. We all see the Jim Furykes and the Hale Irwins are all doing testimonials all the time, but they've progressed so much with these synthetic greens. We're going to talk about that a little bit, what people are doing for recreational golfers in backyards. Also with us, Fred Dozier from the Kona Hospital Foundation. They just had a wonderful fundraiser, and Fred was the recipient of the green that Jim and Roger donated, right, Rick?
That's great.
So we're going to talk about your new green and golf, and also with us is Chris Hayes from Lynx Magazine. Lynx Magazine is a lifestyle publication, one that we all know about. She's here from California. What part of California, Chris?
Hermosa Beach.
Hermosa Beach. Well, welcome to Hawaii.
Thank you.
You're listening to the Emily Gail Talks Golf Show on ESPN Radio, AM 850 KHLO in East Hawaii, AM 790 KKON in West Hawaii. And Kelly, I know we want to talk about the MasterCard Championship, but a lot of people don't realize when Mauna Lani did the Senior Skins, they funded that by themselves. And they underwrote it for many, many years. And then when they wanted to get out of it, it was a money issue. And they needed the help. And that's when Hawaii tourism was really started, because the legislature, the state, the governor, nobody played golf. They did not look at golf as a destination. And that's where the leap has been in the last few years, hasn't it?
Well, I remember back in, I think it was 1989, and we had 2 ABC 30-second commercial units that we needed to sell, and it was a last-minute plea out there to sell them. And we approached the Hawaii Visitors and Convention Bureau at that time. There was no Hawaii Tourism Authority, and they bought the units. And I remember it vividly because I was part of the conversation on the phone, and I think that might have been the start of what is now.
Starting to see that.
I believe there's about $2.5 million investment in golf, the professional events. There's agreements through the PGA TOUR which umbrellas all of the events that are funded through the tour or the Champions Tour. There was great support for the Grand Slam of Golf and the Senior Skins.
Of course, called the Aloha Swing. And it kicks off in January when the snow is falling on the ground in the Midwest, and we show from week after week the series of...
And you have to remember, before the Turtle Bay Championship was the Turtle Bay Championship, it was the Kaanapali Classic in Maui. And that event took place in late October. And since then, what has happened is a little chess match with the tour scheduling department at Ponte Vedra Beach in Florida. And what has been able to be accomplished for the Hawaii events is they have been strung together, which gives us more leverage,
Right.
more overall exposure. And the best thing about it is it takes place in January when it's freezing cold back in Minneapolis.
And the players can play in consecutive events.
That's correct.
That's really, coming in after MasterCard has been great. Well, let's talk about the MasterCard. It's coming up January. It's always the latter part of January this year, January 19th, 20th, and 21st. 54-hole event, $1.7 million purse, but better than that, how many players this year? 42?
42 players.
Yep.
We have 7 brand new players that have never been to Hualalai before. And so, including Fred Funk, who's a crowd favorite, and I think he's going to put on a great show. Other new players this year are Andy Bean, Brad Bryant, David Edwards, John Harris, who is a former college hockey player at University of Minnesota, Jerry Pate, Eduardo Romero, and Scott Simpson, who made a home in Kailua, Oahu for many years. And he's one of Hawaii's favorite sons, so we're excited to see Scott.
Did you see Andy Bean win?
Yes.
Yeah, the thing about these guys now is they're really emotional. And Rick George, president of the Champions Tour, who I know you think of the world of, and I do too, on his media conference a while back, he was saying that the Champions Tour, well, it used to be called the Senior Tour. And then they switched it to the Champions Tour because in those days it was a tour of nostalgia. And now the champions and great players are always coming up, and they wanted to rename it to really give it the name that is indicative of the kind of play that's out there. And it is one that's very competitive. And these guys come up, and some of them can make more money than they ever made in their career. And they're practicing, and they're moving into their latter years of the PGA Tour, knowing they're coming on to the Champions Tour because the purses are big. They're having fun out there. They're being able to continue a career that they thought was going to end shortly. And this year, watching some of those players like Brad Bryant, John Harris, Andy Bean, Fred Funk, get their admission to Hualalai, every single one of them, after they won their event, because they have to win an event to play at the MasterCard Championship, just like at the Mercedes. Every one of them mentioned, now I get to go to Hualalai, didn't they?
And I think that's a testament to the resort and to the staff at Hualalai Resort. Not only the golf course, which is, if you've played at a Hualalai golf course, it's in phenomenal condition. We just got our agronomy report from the PGA Tour. They sent their advance man here, and every comment was excellent as it had to do with the way that golf course is taken care of. But beyond the golf course, you've got a 5-diamond hotel. You've got first-class facilities. You've got a tremendous restaurant. The swimming pools, the Hawaiiana and the Aloha Spirit is probably, bar none, at any resort you can find in Hawaii, and that's what makes us special to begin with the mainland competitors and resorts on the mainland. So the players, this is their reward. When the players come here, they are treated to many things by the Commissioner Fincham himself, and it's a reward for winning. And so in Andy Bean's case, he hadn't won since 1987 at the Kapalua International.
I was so emotional watching him
It was
win.
the Isuzu Kapalua International, so it was almost a 20-year journey for Andy. And about 3 events prior to his win, he was in contention down to the last hole, and he missed a couple of short putts that would have put him either in a sudden death playoff or he would have won the event. So it was a big win for Andy Bean.
And talking about how much they love coming here, Bruce Summerhays came with 42 family members last year. Jay Stickle tells me it's the only event he comes to that his daughter wants to go to. So they all, it's a vacation for the family members, and it's something that they like winning the money, and they like having the championship, but they love having that honor of being able to come to Hualalai. The criteria is the player has to have won an event in the last couple of years, and then we have some sponsor exemptions and a major in the last 5 years.
That's correct.
And sponsor exemptions, and can you make some announcements on that right now?
We've got 3 of our 4